Welcome to RuralStrong, where we talk real challenges and bold solutions in rural economic development. I'm your host, Joe Barker. Let's get into it. Welcome to RuralStrong. We are coming to you today from the Southwest Tennessee Development District podcast studio in Jackson, Tennessee. And wow, do we have a special guest today. We have the federal co-chair of the Appalachian Regional Commission with us, and Co-Chair Manchin was appointed the 13th federal co-chair in May of 2021 and became the first ARC federal co-chair from West Virginia. Co-Chair Manchin, welcome to RuralStrong.
Well, thank you so much, and it's great to be with you, Joe, and I love RuralStrong. I love that name.
Well, you know, we all struggle, particularly in rural areas, and I think we have to be strong, and the reason we began this podcast is to have our listeners learn from people that's been involved in the rural arena, particularly economic development, and hopefully can come up with some thoughts, some plans that can improve their communities. So with that, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about ARC and the role that the federal co-chair plays?
I would love to. So ARC is a really unique federal entity, and I think that the unique qualities that I will talk to you about is what makes ARC not only so special, but also why it has been so successful over these 60 years. It is one of the only partnerships between local, state, and federal entity, and that's actually written as part of our statute. We don't go in anywhere to fix something. You know, the federal government is not coming in and telling you how to fix your problem. What we do want to do, though, is invest in communities that have a good plan, that have gone to their state and gotten approval and matched by the state. And then we become that third leg of the stool, and we invest in that project. And that's usually what takes it over the top. But that's the reason that I'm called a federal co-chair and not just a federal chair. The 13 governors are the commission, and each year they elect one of their own to be the state co-chair. And then we work in partnership. This year, the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, is our state co-chair. But last year, Governor Bill Lee from right there in Tennessee was the state co-chair. So it alternates every year. And I just really feel, in looking at this, not only from before I was in this position, but now that I am, that it is that defined partnership and the fact that we were created specifically for economic development that goes into actually a sort of a building block in 5 arenas. We help build business. We help build workforce ecostructures, which of course is your training and education. We build infrastructure, which of course are your highways, your broadband, your water. We certainly build on regional culture, heritage, and tourism. And then we help build leaders and community capacity. And all that is to bring our 423 counties and 26 million Appalachians into parity with the rest of the country. That's our mission.
Well, and I know that the Appalachian Regional Commission, you mentioned the number of counties you serve, but you stretch, what is it, all the way from New York State, all the way down to Alabama on the eastern seaboard?
Well, in northern Mississippi.
In northern
Southern
Mississippi.
New York to northern Mississippi.
Right. And you know, here in West Tennessee, where I'm located, we're under a regional commission, Delta Regional Authority. Tell our listeners, what is a regional commission?
Well, actually, it's interesting. The Delta Regional Commission was formed several years after the ARC,
Right.
and actually, ARC was used as a model
Absolutely correct.
to replicate kind of what we were doing into an area that extended beyond our realm, because we are technically only the Appalachian Mountain Ridge. West Virginia is totally in the Appalachian region, but all the other 12 states, you notice the counties that are included in the ARC are those counties that have part of that Appalachian Mountain Ridge running through them.
So, what is your vision as the federal co-chair for rural economic development in your region?
Well, Joe, it was interesting. When I came on board, we were in COVID. And so I wasn't doing any traveling. And I, of course, lived in West Virginia all my life. But when COVID lifted and I started visiting the other states, two things struck me. One was the commonality. I mean, it seemed like every state I was in visiting a project, I would think to myself, wow, this looks just like West Virginia. Or this project is just like something we're doing in West Virginia. That struck me. And then the other thing that struck me is that everywhere I went, the states were very proud to obviously talk about the grants they had received and what they were doing, and they were all doing good things. You had a real sense of pride and commitment from the states. But what struck me about that is that we are not the 13 states of Appalachia. We are the Appalachian Regional Commission. And so I started reaching out to the governors and to the states to say, we are a region. We are the Appalachian Mountains that run through the eastern part of the United States. And it seems to me that if we worked more together, shared projects, forgot about where the boundaries are, that we could make our region much stronger. And if we have a strong Appalachian region, all of our states are going to do better. And so over time, I mean, through the time that I've been here and talking about it, and then that actually became one of our initiatives with our RISE grant, we do now have states partnering with each other. They don't have to, all 13 don't have to partner on every project. But if you reach out and partner with at least one other state, a perfect example is right there in Tennessee, Joe, the Tennessee River Line group, which is a consortium of entities that have joined together and are working with Alabama and Mississippi and Tennessee to connect riverfront towns. So they are connecting in ways that allow that share information about the riverfronts, what's available, what different towns are doing. And so you're creating now a whole system. You could take a boat, start in Mississippi, come all the way up to Tennessee, and have all kinds of fun activities just because of the way these states have connected. So my vision is that Appalachian region really what has been a force in this country from the very beginning in providing the energy that made this country energy independent, the timber, the water, everything that the military, I mean, everything that has happened in this country, the people in the Appalachian region have been the backbone of that. And I believe that the stronger we make our region, not only is it good for the region, I think it's good for our country.
Well, I absolutely agree. And speaking of that Tennessee River line, actually, and even though the county where I grew up in Tennessee is not under the ARC footprint, but I grew up in Savannah, Tennessee, which is located on the Tennessee River. And it's always been, I think, a dream for all of us who grew up in those small river towns that we could have a connection, and I certainly applaud you and your organization for supporting that. You mentioned earlier about how ARC gets involved in business development and workforce and infrastructure and tourism. Uh, are there any of those particular initiatives that you think might be more important in the success of rural communities, or is it more like putting the pieces of a puzzle together?
Joe, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's more like putting pieces of a puzzle together. We have in our little game box at ARC, you have our area development money, and that's the money that, of course, our budget comes out of Congress, and we take a portion of that money goes to each state, and that's divided according to first how many counties you have and how many distressed counties you have. But you get that money that goes straight to the governor's office. So the state has money that they can put some priorities on things. Then you've got the Power Grant initiative that came out that is all about economic development, reinvigorating towns and communities. So that's a very important, a critical part of it in terms of redeveloping business, getting industry to come back, manufacturing to come back. And one example in Ohio, Shawnee State University is using a $2 million power grant to develop the area's advanced manufacturing workforce. So they're committing money for training and education so that as industry comes back, they will have a trained workforce right there that can have those jobs. And then I mentioned to you about the ARISE grant, which is that multi-state where we're asking states to work together. Another example besides the Tennessee River line is a 5.2 million RISE grant for the Appalachian Rural Health Technical Assistance Center, which will connect 66 counties in Appalachian, New York, and Pennsylvania. And this is all around rural health where there are struggles with training and finding the help that is needed to build that workforce in those areas. So that's the reason when you were saying putting the pieces of the puzzle together, it takes grants in all these different arenas to really create a success at the end of the day. You want business, but you want healthy people on your workforce, and you want good training, and you want people working together. So, and certainly stressing our tourism. I think COVID was the silver lining for us in COVID is that so many people in our country discovered the beauty of Appalachia when they tried to get out of the city.
Well, and all of us in rural areas are certainly aware of what the opioid crisis has done to our communities and all the other drugs that have flowed in. And I guess my question to you is, are you seeing some success from your programs in getting these people back to work?
We are. And I think, it's like anything, Joe. It's one day at a time and one step at a time for these individuals. But I have noticed over, through the region, the death rate is down. The people that are in training and retraining and in jobs, the numbers of those individuals are going up, and they're holding. One of their big challenges is to convince business to hire and give these people a second chance, because some of them have been incarcerated because of the drug. So you have a double whammy. They've got a record and they have a substance problem. And if you can convince people to give these individuals a chance, and they have the support system around them to help them, we're finding that it's working, that businesses have been pleased with the success, the outcomes of hiring these individuals. And we truly are bringing people, we're bringing people back into where they have a life.
Well, and I certainly applaud you and your commission for having a focus on this because, any of us in rural areas, there's probably not a family that hasn't been affected by this opioid crisis. And certainly we know it's a marathon, not a sprint, but we're
Right.
thankful that there are organizations like yours that focus on this. Let me ask you something. When you were talking about collaboration and cooperation, and I run a regional economic development organization with 8 counties and 35 cities. And why, Madam Co-Chair, why do you think it's so difficult to get communities to work together? I mean, it's just always been amazing to me, and I know you're trying to get states to work together, not only local communities. But one of the biggest challenges I've seen is just getting neighboring counties to work together.
The irony about this is, Joe, is that I think it goes back to money. These communities, whether you're talking about a little local community or you're talking about your state, you always need money. And so I think what happens, you have an idea. Well, you're not going to share that idea with anyone because you're going to write a grant to get money. And if you tell somebody else about that idea, they might write a better grant and then they'll get the money and you won't. And I just think historically that has been the biggest. I mean, it's sort of like you need the money, but then it also isolates people and projects. They don't want to share. They don't want anyone else to know about what they're doing. And I think that's been the cycle that we have to break, that, you can work together and everyone can get some money. And by sharing that money and making a bigger project, you're going to have a much greater impact on the people around and how it affects not only your community then, but how it affects your region. I just think we've always been afraid if we told anybody else what we were doing, we would somehow lose out.
Yeah, we have that Friday Night Lights, that competition that it's hard to overcome sometimes. And I want to go back to something else you mentioned when you were talking about the programs that ARC is focusing on. And we all love to see the big buildings built in our communities where we have a visual of what we think economic development is. But I want to talk a little bit about tourism and the ARC focus on tourism and how important you think that is to rural communities.
Well, as I mentioned, I truly think that COVID kind of reintroduced to our country this beautiful Appalachian region, not only the beauty of the land, but when you think about our heritage of quilt making and our recipes and our storytelling and our knitting and pottery and all of the arts that the Appalachian region has really not only developed, but I mean, these are beautiful pieces that are juried in exhibits and sales that we sort of brought back. I think people in Appalachia that live here that have been in these communities sort of took for granted that, their grandmother made every child in the family their own quilt. And they were beautiful, but we didn't think about them as expensive or anything that people would want to come in from out of town and buy. And yet we found that all of this history and these beautiful arts that we were taking really from the land, a lot of the prints and the colors, actually is one of our biggest economic development. It's one of our big economic drivers now.
And what
in
is
it.
and what I'm having a senior moment, but what is the community in West Virginia that's known for bringing all the local artists together? Um,
Tamarack.
there you go. I visited there several years ago, actually, when I was working for state ECD. Man, I was just thoroughly impressed with what they've done there.
I mean, it blows you away when you look at the talent of the people that, as I said, I think for so many families and all just took for granted what their uncle did or their grandfather or their mother or their aunt. And they're things that people from other parts of the country look at and just think they're the most beautiful things they've ever seen in the world. And they are in many cases. So I think we, again, bringing more people into the state, started recognizing that we have a lot of attributes here that we just needed to advertise and showcase, and that people will come.
Well, absolutely. And I think all our rural communities have very talented people that have skills that translate into what you're talking about the arts and the crafts and these types of things. Let me ask you this. How important is community engagement in developing effective economic strategies in rural areas?
Well, I'll tell you that one of the biggest challenges, the first challenge that we had in Appalachia, where we didn't have any roads, we didn't have any highways, and people can't go where they can't get to, and so building the highways was sort of our first challenge. But then the second challenge has been broadband. Broadband is as difficult to get through these mountains as the highways were. But you cannot expect to grow when you look at the world as it is today and how we rely on technology to reach it on our jobs, for everything that we do. We need that outlet, that access to Wi-Fi, to the internet, and it doesn't matter how wonderful a place is, how beautiful it is. If people come to stay somewhere and they can't make a phone call or get on their iPad, they're not going to come back. And they certainly aren't going to plan to live there. So I think our biggest challenge is making sure that we're getting broadband out, and I mean to the last mile. Every family in the Appalachian region should have access to the internet, to Wi-Fi, the same way we have access to electricity.
So,
And
where would
until
you
we can guarantee that, we've still got a challenge.
and I know we have a lot of geographical challenges when we talk about broadband infrastructure, but when you look at the ARC region, excuse me, I know there's been a lot of progress made in the last few years. Where is that now in your region as a whole, access to broadband? Where are y'all right now?
Well, we have come a long ways, obviously. And again, it has been states starting to sort of work together. Some of your states have what they call co-ops, and the power companies actually work with the broadband companies, um, sharing poles and lines, but that's not throughout. I'll tell you where we have the last biggest struggle is through the most rugged part of the Appalachian Mountains, and that's southern West Virginia, eastern Kentucky, southwestern Virginia. That's where you find the most rugged mountain ridge. And it's just tough. It's just tough getting through there. We're doing it. And at one point, the federal government said, "Oh, it's done. It's done." And we asked some of these federal officials to come over into different parts of West Virginia and Kentucky. And we said, "Call your office, find out what's going on." And they had no signal. So they realized pretty quickly that what they thought was all taken care of is not quite all taken care of yet. But we're getting there.
Well, it's a it's a huge challenge, and as you have expressed, when I was growing up, it was all about highways, and now we've got the technological highway, and it's essential for the success of our rural communities. Let me ask you this: if there's a local leader listening to this podcast and is thinking about a project, and it's in the Appalachian region. What would you say to that local leader about looking to secure funding for a project?
Well, I would certainly recommend them to go to our website, arc.gov, and look at the initiative, the grants that we have available that, we talked about earlier, and see what fits. And then I would tell him that he should go back and pull his business friends together, and they should have a big table. You can always invite a few more, and get a plan, and get some match, get some businesses to invest in the plan, and then take it to their state, and get the state to agree that it's a good idea, invest in it, and then ARC will be more than happy to be that third partner, and invest with them to create one more good economic development in our region.
So they have to be proactive, and I encourage any local leader out there. It's much better to be proactive than reactive when it comes to making your community successful. In just a couple of minutes we've got left, looking ahead. In your experience, what do you see are the emerging trends in rural economic development that you think we, as local leaders and directors of regional organizations, what should we be paying attention to?
Well, one of the challenges that I think we all face, Joe, in the last few years, we have had horrific weather disasters that we haven't experienced before in the Appalachian region. And between Hurricane Helene, the serious flooding, the tornado through Kentucky, where we lost lives and businesses and whole communities. That's something that we've had flooding throughout Appalachia, but we're talking about extreme conditions that have just really left people with nothing. And so I think we have to continue to think, how do we, as we come back, we've got to look at housing that is more affordable, more efficient, more resistant to the weather factors. Where we build and how we build is going to be important. And I think that just keeping these things in mind, one of the things I hear as I travel around the region is we need more affordable housing. So I think talking and thinking about development, thinking about these new homes that you can sort of build in modules and put together so you can build a home much more quickly than you could in the past. And these are good, substantial homes, easier to heat, easier to cool, and more resistant to weather factors like flooding and winds. So, I would encourage people to, as they think about the future, think about where you're planning your development. What are the components? Certainly, we are so pleased of the industry that's coming back into the Appalachian region, manufacturing that left. We have the Industrial Commons in North Carolina is bringing textile industry back across 3 states. We've got car manufacturing. I think we want to continue to think about industry because we have such a dedicated workforce. Any industry that you go and talk to will talk to you about the quality of worker that you find throughout the Appalachian region, the strong work ethic. They come to work on time. they're loyal, they stay with the job. So we know that if we can get industry in here and the right kind of industry, that the people of Appalachia will support it, and it will give them good jobs. And then what we have to do is make sure we're providing the training, the development that they need, so that the people right here in this area can stay and live and work in it where they love. So, that's what I would just encourage people to think, kind of in two veins. First of all, look at where you're planning development. Think about these weather factors that have certainly infringed upon our lives. And then think about, as we vision for the future, what is the type of housing that we need? What is the type of training that we need? And how do we continue to encourage that entrepreneurial spirit that's always been alive and well throughout Appalachia?
Well, great information and advice from the Appalachian Regional Commission Federal Co-Chair Gayle Manchin. And Madam Co-Chair, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being with us on RuralStrong. And I know the ARC is in good hands with you, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Joe, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving us this opportunity to talk about the Appalachian Regional Commission. And thank you for RuralStrong.
Well, thank you, and look forward to speaking again in the future.
I hope so. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on RuralStrong. If you found this helpful, share it. And follow the show for more insights from rural leaders making a real difference. Until next time, stay rural strong.